הטלפון שלי לא פה בזמן, למטה.
טוב.
את צריכה שאני אביא אותו?
לא. איזה כיף לראות אותך, מירי.
מה תפקידה בכוח?
נראה לי שאני רוצה שלא יראו אותך בהתחלה כשאני מציגה את ה...
מה שאת רוצה.
אני הרי אציג את האמבסדור, ואחרי זה את...
הדר, אתם בלייב, פשוט לשים על השטק.
אני הרי אציג את האמבסדור, ואחרי זה את...
אוקיי. הדר, את שומעת אותי? אוקיי, בסדר גמור. בינתיים מירי מתחברת גם דרך הטלפון שלה, והטלפון ישמש לה מיקרופון ורמקול. כנראה מסיבות כאלה ואחרות אין לה את האודיו במחשב. אוקיי, לא שומעים אותך הדר. אנחנו מתחילים...
מה עם יהושע?
בואו נראה.
יש לך את הטלפון שלו?
כן.
אני רואה גם במחבר מודיעין.
אני רואה שהשגריר פה. אני רוצה לדעת אם הוא פשוט רוצה לפתוח את הערב, או שהוא רוצה שאני אציג אותו קודם.
המתורגמן לא התחבר, ושומעים אתכם בלייב.
אני רוצה לדעת... רגע.
הגברת היפה שהופיעה קודם זו המנחה הקרואטית?
אני אתחיל, אני אגיד כמה דברים, ואז אני אעביר לך את זכות הדיבור, אוקיי?
אני יכולה להציג אותך.
הכל בסדר. אוקיי, השעה עוד כמה שניות, 8, in few minutes there will be 8 o'clock p.m. in Israel, 7 o'clock p.m. in Croatia. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. I greet you all and I extend to you a warm welcome to our special project online under the title of Past Progressive. This event is being done in cooperation with the Bar-Ilan University in Israel and with Miss Hadar Galron, who is a screenwriter, actress, and a professor at the university. Today is the 27th of January, which is the International Holocaust Remembers Day, which the whole world is identifying itself and in remembering the horrible tragedy and the consequences of the Holocaust, which happened 76 years ago. On this day, the Red Army liberated the Auschwitz-Birkenau extermination camp, and since then, this has become the International Holocaust Remembers Day. I would like to extend a warm welcome also to my friends and colleagues from the diplomatic corps in Zagreb. I myself right now is in Israel. I'm in Israel right now together with my family. So if from time to time you will hear some voices, noise coming from the other side, these are my 2 grandchildren fighting for not going to bed on time. I again welcome you wholeheartedly, and I would like to, this is not mine, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Hadar Galron, who will be the moderator of this very special evening, and I'm sure every one of us will understand and will carry with him after the event some thoughts about the implication of the Holocaust, which is the biggest human tragedy in humankind, in mankind, with him or with her, to reflect and also to think about what are the implications of the second and the third generation of children of survivors. So without further ado, Ms. Galron, the floor is yours, and let us really enjoy, it's not the right word, but let us listen with a big interest to what you and the other 2 participants, Mr. Yaakov Buchman, and who is the other one?
Miri Shchori and Rosette Rothman.
I know, Miri Shchori.
And Rosette Rothman.
And Rosette from Canada. But I want to stop here and to ask everyone to mute only those who are speaking now. The rest, please mute your telephone so there will be no interruption. Thank you and welcome again.
Thank you to Ambassador Mr. Ilan Mor for initiating this event. And I would like to invite for a few words of introduction Professor Yoshua Thierry Alcolombre from the Bar-Ilan University. We cannot hear you.
Here we are. You do hear me? Okay.
Now we can hear you. Great.
So I wanted to say it is a very moving event tonight, and it's for me a pleasure and an honor to say a few words of introductions. I want us to emphasize some important aspects in my eyes. First of all, really, the fact that this evening we have an act of documentation and remembrance, which is initiated by Ambassador to Israel in Croatia, Mr. Ilan Moore, and really, Toda Rabba, thank you, Kol HaKavod, and produced, and this event is produced and compared by Hadar Galron. And it's very moving because it's about the memory and pain of survivors. But here, first and foremost, well, actually, we have to emphasize this fact that it's also about the pain of the children of the survivors, the second generation that also carries the trauma and invisible scars of the Holocaust. Specifically, we'll talk tonight, so the trauma of the encounter with the so-called angel of death, monstrous Josefa Mengelea. The second thing I wanted to emphasize is the connection between the documentation and creation, the act of creation. And really, thanks to Hadar, we'll see the play, part of the play Whistle, which is a unique collaboration of Yaakov Buchan and Hadar Galron. Whistle documents the story of Mengele's Jewish secretary through the semi-biographic story of a daughter. And here, the freedom of art allows a more internal penetration into the depth of the wounded soul of both mother and daughter. This kind of modern tragedy, which reminds us about Greek tragedy, and like Greek ancient tragedy, it evokes a collective memory while shaping the souls of the heroes, of the characters. And the third thing, it's an innovation, is a connection. This also is, I have to emphasize, very important in Menai, and really it's a part of the honor I have to talk to tonight, the connection between theater and academy. And I would like to mention that Hadar Galron, is not only a brilliant actor and writer, she's also a teacher in our department. She teaches dramatic writing and directing as part of the theater program that we have established for 2 years in the Department of Comparative Literature at Bar-Ilan. And a workshop creating from biographical and autobiographical materials offers to students a creative and, I dare say, therapeutic sometimes, in somewhat therapeutic approach to the process of theatrical writing and presentation. So this is, I think, the challenge of this evening. And at Bar-Ilan, we are proud to incorporate in our curriculum the theoretical and historical approach along with the practical approach. And the questions that will be discussed tonight through the interviews and presentation can be a topic for thought and research. And last but not least, I wanted to point out a fascinating coincidence. This evening, you know that this evening, which ends the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, this evening is also, according to Jewish tradition, the eve of the Tu B'Shvat holiday, which is a new year of trees, of the trees. On this day, the Jews celebrate the blessing of trees and fruit. Jewish sage likened man to the tree of the field, Etz HaSadeh, in our humane ability to survive and bear fruit. Now, this is a tree, this living tree, this is a tree that the Nazis wanted to cut down. And I feel that our meeting tonight, the mediator between men and women from all over the world, is a sign that despite everything, the tree continues to live and grow. Thank you to you. Thank you, Hadar.
Thank you, Professor Yoshua Colombra from the Bar-Ilan University. And well, here we are. I would like, first of all, to introduce briefly the three guests. I am here with Mr. Yaakov Buchan, who is an artist and a writer, an author, playwright, and he's won many prizes for his writings. Many of his writings have to deal with the topic of the Holocaust. There is Mrs. Rosette Rothman from Canada. You can say hi, Rosette. Rosette from Canada. Hello. And Miri Shchori also from Ramat Gan, from where I live too. The thing that these three very dear people have in common is the fact that at least one of their parents survived the terrors of Auschwitz. And not only survived, but I would say survived because they were taken to work for the angel of death. So parodically speaking, it was Dr. Mengelea who gave them life. I will begin, I think, with just briefly asking each of the interviewees to tell us what their parents' job was at Auschwitz. So, Rosette, let's begin with you. You're in Canada. What
yes. Hi, my mother. All right. Yes. My mother was 21 when she was taken to Auschwitz on the first transport of women from Slovakia. And for a few months, she worked outside. And then her sister approached the office to say that my mother had beautiful handwriting and already understood or spoke about 7 languages at the time and had graduated from a business school. So she was very highly educated, and she was taken into work in the office, and her job was to write the names and tattoo numbers of the women who were going to the gas chambers. And then in 1944, sometime, she actually was taken to do tattooing on the Hungarian women who had arrived in Auschwitz at that time.
I want to go back to one small fact that you mentioned. Her sister was the one that told the administrators in the Auschwitz camp about the handwriting. But why?
Yes, it was.
Why did she do this?
My mother was very timid. My mother was ready to die. She did not want to be there. My aunt, who was 4 years younger, had tenacity and street smarts. She found them all decent jobs inside so that they had protection against the elements. And it was my aunt who got my mother this prime job.
Okay, we'll get back to the question of the aunts. There were 3 sisters together there in Auschwitz, right? 3 entered and 3 left.
Ultimately, yes. Yes.
Thanks to Edith, the middle sister.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back here to Yaakov Buchan, who will be answering in Hebrew, but I will translate him immediately to English. So, Yaakov, what was your mother's job in Auschwitz?
אמא שלי הייתה העוזרת של דוקטור מנגלה.
My mother was the helper of Dr. Mengelea.
במובן כזה שהיא הייתה המזכירה שלו, ובעיקר מתרגמת את המכתבים שלו מעברית לרוסית ומרוסית לעברית.
גרמנית. My mother was his secretary, and she also had to translate all his documents from Russian to German and from German to Russian. She also got the privilege of doing his manicure once in a while, manicuring these hands, which he learned to hate very, very quickly.
אני רוצה להמשיך. כשאימא שלי סיפרה לי שהוא עשתה לו מניקור, שאלתי אותה פעם, למה לא הכנסת לו את המספריים לעיניים?
Once I asked, my mother told me that she manicured his hands. And I said to her, as a young boy, I said to her, well, why didn't you take the scissors and dig them in his eyes?
ואז היא אמרה לי משפט שמלווה אותי כל החיים.
And then she said a sentence that has gone with me all my life.
אוי, מה אתה מדבר, ילד שלי? הם גנבו לנו שם את השכל.
Oh, my little boy, what are you talking about? There, they stole our minds. So, yes, they stole her mind. I would now like to, this is
אבא?
your father and your mother and
Okay.
you, yes?
וזה אח של אבי.
And your uncle.
Yeah.
Your father also survived Auschwitz.
Yeah.
Okay, and Miri, to you. Both your parents were in Auschwitz, and both your parents were somehow involved with Dr. Mengelea. Can you tell us a bit about them?
Okay, my parents arrived together in 20th transport from Belgium. My mother was very beautiful. That's what the idea was. She was chosen by Dr. Mengelea to undergo experiments in sterilization. My father was a doctor, a physician, and he was chosen to be, as a Jew, he couldn't work as a doctor, but he was assistant trying to save the lives of the men, the males that underwent the same experiments.
I will just, I think
they saw each other.
It was a bit unclear, so I will just.
They saw each other. Sorry, I don't hear you, sorry.
I just want to go over a bit of what you said, because I'm not sure how clear it was. Your mother was taken and she was in block 10. They did experiments on her, right? Whereas your father, who was a physician, was taken to work as an assistant to a physician for Dr. Mengelea.
Exactly. But he tried to save the lives of those who went, the males, the men, who underwent those experiments in sterilization.
So he
Saw
tried.
my mother all along this
Uh-huh. He saw your mother every day there in Auschwitz.
Not every day, I'm not sure that it's every day. But as I visited this camp of Auschwitz-Birkenau, I saw they were on the two sides of the same court, if you want, the same space. So they could see each other if they were in the right time, of course. But actually they could see each other, and they did. So he knew exactly what she is going through. And I am not sure she knew about him, but they both worked or were with Mengelea. Yeah.
Miri, if you can make the camera in a way that we can see your mouth and face, it will help us. So your father saw your mother in Auschwitz once in a while, and then after they left Auschwitz, after the war, they got together, and they married.
Problem, sorry.
So Ben will sort out the technical problem, and in the meantime, I'll go back to Rosette and Yaakov. One thing is it's a miracle that each one of you are here tonight, because I think that in the intentions of your mothers, or in the minds of your mothers at the end of the war, none of these mothers, this is something also that they had in common, none of these mothers thought that they wanted to be a mother, that they would ever be a mother, some because of experiments that were done on them, and some because of the horrific things they'd been through in the war that made them not want to bring children into a world that treats children and treats humans as they had been treated. So it's really a miracle that you're here, the tree of life, and being born in the shadow of the traumas of the war is not an easy thing for either mother or child. Rosette, tell me, did you know what your mother had been through?
My first inkling was when I was around 6 or 7 years old, and it was my birthday, and my mother took me to not a toy store, but the fanciest china shop in our small town of London, Ontario in Canada. And she said to me, choose whatever you like. And I found a Kaiser figurine of a ballet dancer. And I had been taking ballet already for a couple of years, and I told her that this is what I would like for my birthday. And to this day, I won't forget, her eyes teared up, and she said, I'm so sorry, I can't buy you this, it's German. And that was my very first clue. So, and then when I was around 16, I found a newspaper mock-up that needed my mother's okay to print. And I read it, and it was about the orchestra leader, Alma Rosé, who was in Auschwitz. And her brother settled in London, Ontario at the university there. And the movie Playing for Time was coming on. It was with Vanessa Redgrave. I don't know how many of you will remember it, but it was quite controversial because Vanessa was very vocal and pro-Palestinian. So a newspaper author from the London Free Press approached Alma's brother about doing a story on her. And he said, you know, I hadn't seen her for years, but there are 2 women I know who were in Auschwitz with her. So they interviewed my mom and my aunt. And that was the first time that I saw in writing that they were on the first transport.
How old were you then? How old were you then? 16.
16.
Wow.
Yes, so that was the first time that I knew they were on that first transport. So that was quite a shock to me. And as you referred, my mother didn't, sorry, I was to say, my mother agreed to marry my father with one stipulation, that they did not have children. And I was a total surprise to them. But we lived with my aunt and uncle, and I was the darling of 2 families.
In the same house?
I had 2
in the same house? So
yeah.
After they've gone through the Holocaust, these 2 sisters decide to live together?
Yes. My mother felt that my Aunt Edith had saved her life so many times in Auschwitz. She spent the rest of her life trying to repay
Ona je
her
željela
and
provesti ostatak
shelter
života.
her. So we
Tako da je
lived in the
to-
same house. We had one business.
Zbog toga
We
smo
had
živjeli
one
u istoj
car.
kući, u istom kućanstvu.
And I didn't know I was an only child until I was about 5 years old. And we moved to 2 separate houses, 2 blocks apart.
So growing up, you felt even privileged, a little princess among so many loving people.
Yes. And also the Jewish community in London, Ontario had quite a large number of survivor families. We think there was around 45 or more, and they were all the same as us. They all spoke with an accent. The mothers had tattoos on their arms that they kept hidden all the time, but we were aware of them. Very few of us had grandparents, and but I had all these aunts and uncles who I knew weren't related to me, but who were my family. It was a very lovely, rich environment to grow up in.
Okay, so thank you for that, Rosette. And now I would like to ask you, Yaakov, what kind of childhood did you experience?
מאז שהייתי ילד הייתי רזה כמו חוט, ואימא שלי לא יכלה לסבול את זה.
Since I was a child, I was very, very thin, like a piece of string, and my mother couldn't stand this.
היא לא רצתה שאני אראה כמו מוזלמן, כמו...
She was scared I'd look like a Muslim.
ואז היא התחילה להאכיל אותי, אבל אני לא רציתי לאכול, אז היא התחילה לספר לי על כל מה שעבר עליה באושוויץ.
And then she wanted to feed me, but I didn't want to eat. So she began telling me all the horrors she went through in Auschwitz. I was a little boy, how old?
החל מגיל 3, 4,
From
5,
the age of
6.
3, 4-ish.
הלאה והלאה.
And so she was telling you these stories.
Yes. ובגלל שהסיפורים האלה היו כל כך איומים, אז אני הייתי פותח את הפה מרוב תדהמה, והייתה תוקעת לי את הכף עם האוכל.
So these stories were so horrifying that I would sit there wide-eyed and open-mouthed. And my mum would use this open mouth to stuff another spoon of food into my mouth. So the stories of the things she went through in Auschwitz were manipulated to feed you. Yes?
Yeah.
But did you have the feeling, Rosette was speaking about the feeling of a community, of being together, of many aunts and uncles, of being loved. I will go back a bit because I know your story so well because of our play. To say just 1 second about where you were born.
באוסטריה. נולדתי באוסטריה במחנה מעבר. מי שנשאר מכל המשפחה, גם של אבי וגם של אמי, שהם היו משפחה מאוד גדולה, עם 8 או 7 אחים, גם לאבי וגם לאמי, לאמא שלי נשאר אח אחד ולאבא שלי נשאר אח אחד.
So I was born in Austria in a transit camp after the war. My mother, for 4 years, had not even had her period, and she didn't know that she could get pregnant. She didn't know that she could get pregnant. She and her husband, who she met there in the transit camp, they both, out of their 8 siblings, had only 1 brother left each. And when she got pregnant, she actually wanted an abortion, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't agree.
היא סיפרה לי בין יתר הסיפורים שהיא נכנסה להיריון, אבל היא לא רצתה אותי, רצתה להפיל אותי. וזו הרגשה מאוד נפלאה שאימא שלך לא רוצה אותך.
My mother got pregnant. She told me from a very young age that she hadn't wanted me. She didn't want me. She wanted an abortion. So really, actually, from the moment I came into the world, I felt that I was really unwanted, which is a completely different experience to what Rosette was telling us before. And growing up, if you could describe the experience of growing up in the shadows of your parents' traumas, how would you describe it?
אבא שלי היה נגר, אמא שלי הייתה עקרת בית. כל היום אני זוכר, התהלכה בבית בעצבנות. אבא שלי יצא בבוקר, חזר בערב על האופניים. מה שאני זוכר זה אווירה של דיכאון.
My father was a carpenter. My mother was a housewife, although your mother was very well educated.
Vaša majka bila je veoma dobro obrazovana.
This is why she got a good job in Auschwitz.
Zbog toga je dobila i dobar posao u Auschwitzu.
Her family were not spared.
הייתה גם פסנתרנית.
Naša obitelj tamo nije
Played
pošteđena.
piano, but
Ona je svirala klavir tamo.
the atmosphere at home, as you describe it, was an atmosphere of depression. Your father would go out every day to work in his carpentry, in his small shop or wherever, and he would come back home in the afternoon, and it was just an atmosphere of no family, no friends,
לא חיבוק ולא אהבה.
and no hugs and no love. Your brother was born many years after you, right? And this was a choice. So really, your birth was another layer of the trauma. Okay, I will speak now to Miri. I hope we can hear you a bit better now. Can you tell us a bit about your experience as a child, and how did you get to know, when did you get to know about the traumas of your parents? We can't hear you, Miri. Okay, so maybe, Ben, maybe we will. Hello?
Try now. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes,
Miri,
great.
unmute. Miri, unmute.
No, it's technical interference. Everything is okay. You can speak freely now.
Yes.
Okay, fine. In my family, there was no talking at all about the
U redu,
Holocaust,
uopće se nije
about the
govorilo
Auschwitz.
o Holokaustu i o Auschwitzu.
Sorry?
It's the translation. We can hear the translation.
Do you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes, I can hear you, Miri. So nobody spoke about it in your home.
Maybe now? How is it now? Okay. Now, in our family, there was no talking at all about the Holocaust or Auschwitz, but I heard the names rolling around. We knew nothing, I knew nothing at least, as if the world began with my being born. Nothing at all except for the numbers tattooed on my parents' hands, of course, and my father having smrti, that means pains, in chest pains mostly. And always everybody was telling me that my parents suffered a lot. But all around were people with tattooed numbers on their heads, so it wasn't something different. I was born in Belgium, and the first years of my being here were not easy, but I know nothing. I remember nothing at all. I have no
Miri,
memories.
can you tell us what happened? First of all, your mother also, the experiments that Mengele did on her were supposed to leave her barren, no?
Exactly. That's why I learned everything when I was very, mature already. Not as a child. I knew nothing. I knew that I'm an only child, but it was very common. And only later I got to know that I was not expected. That means when we came back for the first time to Belgium, I was about 14. And everybody kept calling me what a sardine. That means a package of sardines. And
It's a what? Sorry, I can't hear you properly, Miri.
Sorry.
I cannot hear you very clearly, so you need to speak a bit more slowly. Okay? What did they call you?
What the sardine? That means a package of sardines. Because she became vomiting, and she was not, nobody thought she will ever have a child. She was 43 years old, and after Mengele, she went for every year to Plombières-les-Bains, which was a thermal bath place in Eastern France.
Miri, I'm afraid that the line is very unclear, so I will just, because I heard this story from you, I will complete it so that it can be translated, because it's a shame. Your mother, she went through experiments by Mengele. Twice he did her an experiment of burning her womb, and she was sure she would never be able to get pregnant. In fact, every year she went for therapy to help her body heal. But at the age of 42 or 43, suddenly she got pregnant, and you were a kind of miracle for her. But I want to get to the place where you were born, and then something happened to her. Something happened to your mother when she heard you cry. Can you tell us this and try to speak slowly? I cannot hear you, Miri.
I got to know Sweden.
Pardon? I will have to ask Ben to try and sort this out, but because it's the technical line is very, very difficult. But
Let's move on.
I will just tell you that when Miri's mother heard Miri crying, she couldn't take these cries. She couldn't hear the cries. She couldn't hear her baby crying. And she had to give Miri to a small orphanage home for a few years until they made Aliyah and came to live in a kibbutz. And there she grew up with the children in the kibbutz, in the children's home. And her parents lived in their house. And this was the best way to sort things out. There is one other thing that is in common for all three of you, for Yaakov's mother, for Miri's father, and for Rosette's mother, because all your parents were taken to jobs because they were highly educated. Rosette's mother knew languages, and Yaakov, your mother, knew languages, and Miri's father was a physician, a doctor. But actually, after the war, none of these people worked in the profession that they had before the war. Neither as secretaries, not using your mother's talents either on the piano or with the languages. She just became a housewife. The same happened with Rosette's mother. And Miri's father, although he studied for many years medicine and was a physician even before the war, he never was not a doctor for one day after the war, because he saw what could happen, what people used medicine for, and how it was turned, instead of helping people, ruining people's bodies and ruining people's souls. I think that we can see a small excerpt that Rosette's granddaughter interviewed Rosette's mother, who passed away just 1 year ago, right, Rosette?
Sorry, yes, she died February the 22nd, 2020, at age 99. She's
Wow.
91 in this little snippet you're going to see.
Okay, so Ben, will you put the video of No, you need the computer sound. Ben, you need to share computer sound. Unshare the picture and go back and use the computer sound. Your father, Rosette, passed away just a week and a half ago.
We buried him 2 weeks today. Yes.
2 weeks today.
At 97. He died. I had finished saying the 11 months of Kaddish for my mother on Monday at Mincha, and he died Monday night. And I think he wanted his own 11 months of Kaddish. He didn't want to share all his life he shared. He wanted this for himself. So.
Did he ever tell you about his experiences through the war?
A little bit. I know that he was in the Radom ghetto. He was from Poland, and he was in Pionke concentration camp, and he was liberated from Sachsenhausen by the Russians on May 1st, 1945, which was the same day we always celebrated my mother and her three sisters' liberation. Had they stayed, they got out of Auschwitz. Had they stayed there, they would have been liberated today, but because they went and took jobs in a munitions factory, they were captive for several more months.
Oh, wow. Yaakov, you had a very touching story about the day your mother was liberated.
סליחה. כשאימא שלי והחברות שלה שוחררו מאושוויץ, הם יצאו דרך הגדר, התחילו להתקדם, בהתחלה לאט, אחר כך קצת יותר מהר, יותר מהר, יותר מהר, עד שהגיעו לכפר ששכן ליד אושוויץ.
When my mother and her friends were liberated from Auschwitz, they went out of the fence and they were walking in the beginning slowly and then a bit faster and a bit faster, and they began even running.
הגיעו לכפר, נכנסו לבית הראשון, כל הכפר נעזב על ידי האנשים, ובבית הראשון השולחן היה ערוך מכל טוב.
Okay, so they got to a small village. The village was abandoned by the villagers, and they went into the first house they came across. And when they went into the house, the table was laid with all goodies.
והיות והיא הייתה באושוויץ 4 שנים, ו4 שנים היא לא הצליחה לאכול משהו נורמלי, אז כמו כל החברות שלה, או יותר נכון, לא כמו כל החברות שלה שהתנפלו על האוכל, היא אמרה, אני אחכה. בצד עמדה צנצנת עם פרחים. היא ניגשה לצנצנת, טמנה את הראש שלה בין הפרחים ונשמה. ואז היא אמרה, אז ידעתי שאני אחיה.
So the table was laid with all goodies, and the friends of your mother immediately began eating the food. They hadn't seen food like this for years, but not your mother. Your mother in the corner saw a small vase with flowers in, and she went to the vase and buried her face in these flowers and smelled the flowers. And later she told you that when she smelled the flowers, that was the moment where she knew she would live. That was the moment she knew she would live. Okay, Ben, do we have the video of Rosette?
Yes, we do. Just one moment, please.
The experiences are something that we cannot comprehend today. We cannot comprehend.
אין שום אפשרות בשבילנו להבין מה עבר עליהם באושוויץ, שום אפשרות.
Yes, there's no way of understanding what they went through, in Auschwitz.
אנחנו לא יודעים מה זה לרעוב, אנחנו לא יודעים מה זה פחד מוות, אנחנו לא יודעים
We don't know what hunger is. We don't know what scared to death really means.
אנחנו לא יודעים מה זה לעמוד באפל 10 שעות ביום, ופשוט לחכות, פה נופלת אישה, שם נופלת
We
אישה.
don't know what it means to just stand for 10 hours outside and seeing people just drop dead. We don't know, we cannot know what this means.
פעם אמא שלי,
Let's see if the video is going up. Ben, is there a technical problem? Ben? Okay. Here. No, it's without sound.
Can I say something in between?
Yes.
In the meantime, listening to the stories, this reminds me of our own story growing up in a family of Holocaust survivors, even though my family was not directly survived the Holocaust, but they were, my mother ran away from the Nazis from Romania and found safe haven in Uzbekistan, and my father joined the Red Army from Poland and was part of occupying Berlin with Marshal Zhukov. But my wife's family, they were partisans, and they were actually survived the Holocaust as almost all the other survivors. And the effect of living under the influence of the fear from the Nazis and their collaborators has been transmitted to their children, and from their children even up to today. I know, for example, that in our family it is forbidden to throw away leftovers. No leftovers are allowed. and I'm talking about 80 years after the Holocaust. My son-in-law, my brother-in-law, sorry, was born in Cyprus in the refugee camps, which was built by the British to host those new immigrants, survivors who came from Europe and were not allowed to enter Palestine. And he is a classic example of a second generation Holocaust survivor with all the trauma, all the complication, psychological and physical complication were attached to this. So your stories, which I heard and I listened, and I admire your ability to survive in this kind of environment, family environment, I think should be told and should be part of the process of remembering the Holocaust, not only directly with the survivors, which whose numbers is going down every day, but also the second and the third generation should be considered also part of the victims of this horrible killing and murdering machine of the Nazis and their collaborators.
This is a very important point, and it was just it's opening a new topic, because really second generation and third generation have wounds that are invisible. Maybe they're not tattooed on the body, but these wounds are real. Even for those who did not know, there are many psychological researches that have showed that people who are second generation and even third generation to survivors of genocide or Holocaust have different phobias. They have these fears. They behave differently to people whose parents and grandparents were not exposed. I want to show a small excerpt of a film by a very outstanding woman who herself was one of Mengele's twins. She was also experimented on, her and her sister, and she found a very unique way of dealing with her pain afterwards. Ben, let's have the.
To thank this Nazi doctor for his willingness to document the death of my operation. I didn't know how to say the Nazi. I didn't tell anybody about it because even to me it sounded strange. I didn't want anybody to change my mind. After 10 months, one morning I woke up and the following simple idea popped into my head. How about a letter of forgiveness from me to Dr. Munich? I knew immediately that he would like it, and that was a meaningful gift. A Auschwitz survivor gives him a letter of forgiveness, the Nazi doctor. But what I discovered for myself was life-changing. I discovered that I had the power to forgive. No one could give me that power. No one could take it away. It was all mine to use in any way I wished. And that became an interesting scene because as a victim of almost 50 years, I never thought that I had any power over my life. Now, I began writing the letter, and I didn't know how to write a letter of forgiveness. And it took me 4 months to write it. And then I thought somebody might read it, and my diction in English is good, my spelling is not. So I wanted my former English professor to correct my spelling. So I called her. We met 3 times, and third time she said to me, now Eva, very nice, you forgive this Dr. Munch. Your problem is not with Dr. Munch. Your problem is with Dr. Mengelea. I was not quite ready to forgive Mengelea. She said to me, okay, I have been meeting with you, correcting your letters. Now I want you to do me a favor. When you go home tonight, pretend that Mengelea is in the room and you are telling him that you forgive him. I want to find out how would it make you feel if you could do that. Interesting idea, son. And when I got home, actually, I did something else. I picked up a dictionary and wrote down 20 nasty words, which I read clear and loud. Is that make-believe Mengelea in the room? And at the end, I said, in spite of all that, I forgive you. Made me feel very good that I, the little guinea pig of 50 years, even had the power over the angel of death of Auschwitz. So that is the way we arrived in Auschwitz. Dr. Munch came.
So, very, very controversial. Some people even decided to ban her from the community of the survivors after announcing her will, announcing publicly her will to forgive the Nazis and even to forgive Dr. Mengelea. I cannot say what is good, but I would like to hear from you as second generation, if you think this is possible. If this is possible, if it is good, if there is anything dangerous about forgiving. Rosette, please.
So this was a topic of great discussion in my household. The first thing that I would say is my mother, till she died, never bought German. And that to me meant that she would never forgive them or forget them, but she never vocalized that sentiment. For me, somehow forgiving the Nazis and the German people of that era for what they did seems like it would diminish the atrocities of the Holocaust. I firmly believe they set out to systematically eliminate the Jewish people and the gypsies and the homosexuals, and they showed no remorse. And you can't forgive someone who doesn't show remorse. I think they probably were sorry they didn't get to kill a few more. They were complicit. How can you live outside of Auschwitz or any of the other concentration camps and not smell that horrible smell of burning flesh and not know something horrible was going on and yet not say something? So for me, this lady is wonderful. Maybe I'm not such a good person, but I also do not buy German, and I would not forgive them. I couldn't do that, not because what they did was inhumane, and how can I be humane back to them?
Eva passed away, by the way, on the 4th of July, 2019. Yaakov, what do you think of this act of forgiveness?
משטרת ישראל שלחה את אמא שלי לגרמניה להעיד במשפטם של קצינים נאצים בכירים.
The police of Israel sent my mother to Germany in order to give witness in the court cases of some leading German generals.
היא כל כך הייתה תחת הרושם של השואה כל החיים שלה.
She lived under the impression of the Holocaust her whole life.
עד כשהגיע הזמן שלה להעיד, היא לא הייתה מסוגלת אפילו להסתכל על הנאשמים, בתאי הנאשמים. היא הביטה ישר לשופטים, ורק הצביעה אליהם, וככה היא דיברה, מביטה לשופטים ומצביעה על האשמים.
She could not even though many years had passed, when she went to Germany to give witness in the court, she could not look these officers in the eye. She looked at the judges' faces, and she just pointed with her hand to the other direction where they were sitting in the cubicles.
לעצם השאלה שלך, אני אגיד ככה, זה לא באמת...
And in answer to the question, yes?
אני אגיד ככה, שזה לא... לי זה באמת לא משנה, בעצם לא משנה, כי הרי את העבר אי אפשר לשנות במלוא הנימה.
To me, it doesn't really make a difference, because the past is impossible to change.
והסליחה עצמה, אם היא ניתנת ברצינות או לא ברצינות, בכוונה עמוקה או לא בכוונה עמוקה, מה זה כבר יכול לשנות? מה זה משנה?
And the act of forgiveness, whether given sincerely or whether not sincerely, what really can it change? But I want to challenge you a minute, Yaakov, because she said that for her, it gave her a feeling of power.
אוקיי. אוקיי. אני רק אגיד שאם שמים על כף המאזניים את המילה סליחה, ועל כף המאזניים השנייה את 6 מיליון יהודים, הם מבינים לבד.
If I put on the scales, on one hand, the word forgiveness, and on the other scale, 6 million Jews, then you can know for yourself which one is going to weigh down. Miri, I'm dying to hear your answer. I hope we can hear it, though, clearly. So just speak slowly, okay?
Try to. Well, I've given a thought to this question. And first of all, we are, as a second, third, and so on generation, we are not in any position to say anything. We didn't really endure it. But I don't think it is possible to forget. In the same time, it demands such a terrible emotional toll. It's highly priced energetically. So, in my family, just went on with their life. They did not speak of it. They just buried it. I know that when my mother was old, suddenly she began looking at our neighbor, reminding her of Nati, because he was blonde, blue-eyed, etc. And we took her to a psychiatric interview in Amha, which is dealing with the first and second Holocaust generation. And they told us there that she will collapse if she will think of it, if she will...
Okay, just one second, because they cannot, again, people cannot hear you clearly, so I just want to say what Miri was saying. I will summarize what you've said. What Miri was saying is that we can't really answer this question because we were not there to endure what our parents endured. But I can tell you, Miri said, about my mother, that there was a neighbor, because he was blonde-haired and blue-eyed in Israel, who reminded my mother of the Germans because of his Ari looks. And it was so bad that we had to take her to a psychiatrist. I know also that there are many people who did not get over. These are not horrors that people can actually get over. It's something I remember even as a child. There always used to be someone screaming in the middle of the night, and we would know that it's someone who had been through horrors. So this question of forgiveness, it is really unique. I beg you all to seek this Eva who actually managed to forgive, but and there is the question of, if we forgive, do we forget? We mustn't forget. That we know we must not do. If we can find a way, maybe as a second generation and a third generation, there is a way to find a bridge to some kind of forgiveness to enable us to live better, but never to forget, because otherwise we may find ourselves again, as we have so many times in history found ourselves in this crazy situation of being someone there wanting to wipe us out. I would like now, just towards the end, to put on the experience that is based on Yaakov's experience from the play Whistle. We should have been there physically, maybe, but because of Corona, it's not going to happen. So this play Whistle, in one certain part, which is taken straight from the biography of your mother. It is also about a second generation girl, woman, who is trying to get free from the traumas of the Holocaust of her mother, who is long gone. Ben, let's see.
I do have a little bit of honor. I'm willing to sell it for a slice of happiness, huh? So please, excuse me, I'm taking a shower. I have a date tonight. If anyone can undress us whenever they want, can burn numbers into our arms, can hold us behind electric fences in starvation day after day, can throw live people into ovens, can put gas on us in our showers, then who are we? Happiness you want? We are not allowed to be happy. The minute they see that we are happy, they put a curse on us. Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it, Mom! I can't hear these stories anymore. I can't. No, contrary. You want to hear them again and again and again. You bring me from my grave to remind you. No, no, no. I want to forget, Mom. I want to forget. I want to live. Live. You are asking permission of me to live. Who am I? Give permission to live. Not give permission to live. I remember very well how they brought us all women to the selection point. Left to the death and right to labor. And me, they sent left to death. Me and my mother and my 4 sisters, Ria, Sarah, Chaya, and Leanne. We were already heading towards the grave. Suddenly I feel something strangling me. It was the crooked end of a walking stick. I turned around and find myself looking straight into the eyes of Dr. Josefa Mengelea and him into mine eyes. I did not know it was him. He was a good-looking bastard. His black straight hair combed to a side parting, a gap between his 2 front teeth, and dark, glaring eyes. "All right," he shouted, and threw me to the right. And then the angel of death himself saved me in front of the eyes of the Lord. And my mother. He gave me to work in the secretary to translate all his documents from Russian to German, from German to Russian. This was to be my job. What do you want from me, Mom? What do you want from me? Nothing. I want nothing from you. Nothing. Thank you, to tell me what's going on. Stories, like the stories you used to tell me before you went to sleep, or I wouldn't be scared. Like the story of the young mother that came to Dr. Mengelea and said to him, "Dr. Mengelea, is it true what they say that you ban children, and where is my son?"
No, the sound suddenly went to, I don't know, when we lost the sound. If you find the sound again, then we can put it back, Ben. I don't know why there are technical problems. I'm sorry about it. We did do a check before and everything was fine. But that's the god of Google, Zoom,
And Murphy. And Murphy.
And Murphy, of course. What are you passing on? The you of the second generation, Rosette, Yaakov, Miri. Maybe you can write it for us, Miri, in the chat. What are you passing on to the next generation?
So I'm trying to tell my parents' story. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
I've actually done a few of these types of things, telling their stories in different ways. And the reason that I feel I'm doing this is that 6 million is just incomprehensible for people to understand. But if you talk about your mother or your father, that becomes much more of a real story and something that you can relate to. And that you could even think, it could have been my aunt or uncle or grandfather or even me in this situation. And how would I have reacted and how would I have survived? So I think that we have to keep on telling our stories. We've done a lousy job educating people now. The never again is a total mockery because there have been so many more genocides since the end of World War II. And we have to keep at it to remind people that every single person is an equal and valued person. And until we learn that lesson, mankind is doomed. And that's what I'm trying to talk about when I'm going out and doing some of these things. And if I could just address something you said earlier, I realized I have one overwhelming fear. I cannot be in large groups of Jews. I feel like I am a target. I can't go on the Walk for Israel. Going into our shul for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, my heart is racing because I'm so scared of being there. So that's sort of, I think that's the most prevalent thing that I took as a second generation. And while my mother was very even keeled, her two sisters had major depression problems. And one of their sons became a psychiatrist to deal with his own problems. So we didn't go unscratched, but I think that I was particularly lucky in this group of 3 of us to have had the most nurturing and normal childhood. And I'm forever grateful for that. And I admire the 2 of you for doing such amazing things, given the tough childhood that you've had. So thank you. It was lovely to meet you on this forum.
Thank you, Rosette. Thank you very much. Yaakov, what are you giving on to the next generation, for better and for worse?
מכיוון שכל הילדים שלי, כלומר 3 הילדים שלי, הספיקו להכיר את הוריי.
Yes, because my parents got to know all my children.
הספיקו להכיר את הוריי, ואני יכולתי על ידי כך לשתף אותם בכל מה שאפשר. נוסף לכל, הפכתי להיות סופר, ומתוך ספרים רבים שכתבתי, חלק ניכר מהם הוא על השואה ועל ההורים שלי.
So my children got to know my parents, and my parents got to know my children, and they not only got to hear the stories from my parents, but they also got to, I'm an author, so much of my stories I wrote in my books. I know from some of your children that your children were surprised when reading the books to understand what it is you'd been through.
כן, עד כמה שניתן, אני יכול לשתף אותם בתחושות שלי.
I can try to share my feelings with them as much as possible.
ומה שלא ניתן, לא הכל צריך.
And what I cannot share, then maybe I don't need to. But now I will share. And with this we will end, because I think now I have it on the right side, sound, the part from the play, which is your mother's story, how she was chosen in the line from death to life. 1 second. Here.
Respect, pride. I'm willing to sell it for a slice of happiness, huh? So please, excuse me, I'm taking a shower. I have a date tonight. If anyone can undress us whenever they want, can burn numbers into our arms, can hold us behind electric fences in starvation day after day, can throw live people into ovens, can put gas on us in our showers, then who are we? Happiness you want? We are not allowed to be happy. The minute they see that we are happy, they put a curse on us. Stop it, stop it, stop it. Stop it, Mom, I can't hear these stories anymore, I can't. No, the contrary. You want to hear them again and again and again. You bring me from my grave to remind you. No, 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 I want to forget, Mom, I want to forget. I want to live. Live? You are asking permission of me to live. Who am I to give permission to live, to not give permission to live? I remember very well how they brought us all women to the selection point. Left to the death and right to labor. And me, they sent left to death. Me and my mother and my 4 sisters, Ria, Sarah, Chaya and Leale. We were already heading towards the trains when suddenly I feel something strangling me. It was the crooked end of a walking stick. I turned around and find myself looking straight into the eyes of Dr. Josefa Mengelea and him into mine eyes. I did not know it was him. He was a good-looking bastard with black straight hair combed to a side parting, a gap between his 2 front teeth and dark blaring eyes. Arbeit, he shouted, and threw me to the right, to labor. The angel of death himself saved me in front of the eyes of the Lord and my mother. He gave me to work as a secretary to translate all his documents from Russian to German, from German to Russian. This was to be my job. And what do you want from me, Tamila? What do you want from me? Nothing. I want nothing from you, Mum, okay? Nothing. Unless maybe, you know, you could tell me once more a story, like the stories you used to tell me before we went to sleep, before I went to sleep, so I wouldn't be scared. Like the story of the young mother that came to Dr. Mengelea and said to him, Dr. Mengelea, is it true what they say, that you burn children, and where is my son? And Dr. Mengelea smiled and said, your son is playing with all the other children in the park. And she said, really? Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Mengelea. You really calmed me. And the minute she turned around, he shot her in the neck. But she didn't die, so he ordered the uniforms and the boots to throw her into the ovens. But there were happy stories as well, weren't there, Mum? There were happy stories, a happy story. Tell me a happy story, like the pregnant woman that came to the barracks, and when Dr. Mengelea found out, he marked her stomach and told the uniforms and the boots that they must look after her. And they did, for days and weeks and months. They gave her food. They gave her blankets. And when her time came, Dr. Mengelea himself was standing by her. And when a healthy, perfectly healthy baby girl was born, he was so happy he was humming one of the symphonies of Mozart. And he told one of the uniforms to take the baby aside. And he told the nurse to put the woman's breasts in plaster, because he wanted to see how long a Jewish baby can last without food. Okay, so you're right, okay? You're right, I don't need to meet him. I won't meet Avram. I won't meet anyone. You know why? Because I have nothing to give him.
Okay. Okay. So we've reached the end of this evening. It seems as if the stories could continue for forever. I apologize for the technical issues. We did do a check before, but there are things not in our hands. I want to thank you so much for joining us. Miri Shchori, Rosette Rutman, Yaakov Buchan. Thank you, His Excellency, Mr. Ilan Mor, Ambassador for Israel in Croatia. And to thank also Professor Yoshua Colombre from the Bar-Ilan University. And let's remember to keep telling the stories. Keep telling the stories.
Before we say goodbye, a big thank you to you, Hadar, to the participant, Rosette, Yaakov Bochan, and Miri. A big thank you also to the staff of my embassy, to Eva and to Plaminka, and to my deputy, the consul, Ortal, for assisting and bringing up this very interesting, very emotional, very touching evening, which summarizes actually the day of the International the Holocaust Remembrance Day. I have many issues to talk about it. As you said, there are, the more you think about it, the more you talk about it, the more stories you can tell, the more lessons you can share. But maybe we'll do it some other time. Thank you very much for a very emotional, very informative and touching evening for all of us. I'm happy that we did it in spite of the technical difficulties. And I would like to say again, thank you and shalom from Israel and shalom to all of you. Let us work together, especially now in the days of the corona, to make the world a better one. All the best to you and shalom.
Shalom. Shalom. Shalom. Thank you.
Shalom.
Bless you all. Thank you for all the people who participated.
Thank you, Hadar, for bringing us together.